core ground rigs takuingawa. So yeah, my name's Grant. I saw a nod over there in the corner from one person where I mentioned where I was from, which is I grew up in Huntly, but I'm no longer there. I'm down in the deep south these days. And look, a real pleasure to be here with you all and to kick off your 2-day hui with a little bit of a kōrero around well-being and mindfulness, and a little bit of an opportunity as well to learn about our work with Pause, Breathe, Smile, and maybe how that can benefit you in your work with schools. I had a quick look at your website, and I understand that you work in many schools, so quite a number of those schools are possibly now running the Pause, Breathe, Smile program in their schools. So that awareness just of the program and supporting that kaupapa in different schools, I think could be useful too. So I thought, in the spirit of this conversation around mindfulness and well-being, that we are going to do a little bit of mindfulness practice later, a little bit of a longer, more kind of structured session of practice. But I thought we could just begin right now by taking a few mindful breaths together. And really the intention here before we do that is to one key aspect of mindfulness practice is really being aware of where our attention currently is, and being aware of where it needs to be. So what's the task at hand that I need to be present to in my life right now? Am I on task or am I off task? That is one of the kind of key questions when we're considering mindfulness. So it's a good opportunity. We know that, for instance, being aware of breath, being mindfully aware of the breathing, not controlling it, not manipulating it, but just using it as an anchor point for our attention, that after a period of time, the nervous system starts to self-regulate, and we can start to experience a kind of coming home to where the body is, which is always here in the moment. It can't be anywhere else. So it's a chance to align body and mind, and see what arises, often feelings of calm and clarity, but not necessarily that either. So I think we'll just do a few moments of mindful breathing practice, a chance to gather any scattered threads of attention that may be pinging off in different directions, and collect them here so that we're ready and available. And we've got one question really that I'm going to throw in for you to consider as we go through this. So I'd like to invite you just to, if you can, if the floor's not too far away for you, see if you can place your feet flat on the floor. If the floor is quite far away, then don't worry too much about that. But you're feeling that connection with the ground. Sitting, one of our core practices in Pause, Breathe, Smile is called straight back, soft belly. And this is, we're not rigid about posture at all. It's just about, can we sit in a way that fosters both a sense of alertness, which is what the straight back is about, and relaxation, which is the soft belly side of things. So it's those two qualities in balance. Mindfulness is not just about relaxation. It's not just about alertness, but it is about being relaxed, but awake, present, ready to engage with what is here in my life in this moment. So we use the body to assist with that, to help train the mind in that direction. So sitting in a way that feels relaxed and alert for you. And then you can just let your gaze settle on a spot in front of you, or let your eyes close, whatever is most comfortable for you. And then we're just going to take, first of all, 2 or 3 deep breaths. So breathing in maybe for the count of 4, and then breathing out for the count of 6. So we just want to make that out breath a little longer than the in breath. Just see if we can breathe right out through the body. So breathing in 1, 2, 3, 4, and breathing out 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And then just let your breathing settle into its own natural rhythm. So no longer doing that counting of the breath, but just noticing it as it is, being aware of each in-breath and each out-breath. And seeing if you can use the breathing as an invitation just to settle more deeply into this time and this place, here and now, feeling the weight of your body against the chair, just noticing the rhythms of breathing. Collecting together any scattered threads of attention. And so my question for you, just to drop into this really brief little settling practice, is as you're noticing each in-breath and each out-breath, see if you can just reflect on and call to mind one thing that you like to do in your life that supports your well-being, whether that is being with your family or playing sport or listening to music, whatever it is that really works for you. Of course, I hope, I'm sure there's more than one thing, but just see if you can call to mind one key core thing that you like to do that supports your well-being. And we're just going to take a few more mindful breaths. And for this one, maybe we can go back to counting, but in a different way. So just breathing in, breathing out, counting 1. So you counted 1 breath cycle, breathing in, breathing out 2. And then when you get to 7 mindful breaths, you can open your eyes, maybe notice the quality of sensing, seeing, hearing, just noticing how you're feeling in that moment after you've done this very short mindful breathing practice to settle into here and now. Very good. Thank you very much for participating in that. What I would like you to do now is just in the chat, write down that one thing that you like to do that supports your well-being. And while you're doing that, I'll get my screen sharing here. I'm kind of staring at myself at the moment, which is a little disconcerting, but I'll bring some slides up here. All right, so hopefully you can now see that on screen in front of you, and I'm very keen to see what's popping up here in the chat. Really great. So I'm assuming everyone can see that. There's a few gardeners in the room by the looks of it, which is really lovely to see. And the point of this exercise of really considering what do I like to do that supports my well-being is to highlight that there's common threads here, and that well-being essentially is not rocket science. We all have an intuitive understanding and a kind of repository of wisdom around well-being. We know what works for us. We know what works for people close to us. And a lot of what you're writing in the chat there pretty much falls into these categories that hopefully you can see here on the screen in front of you. It's a lot about connections with people, with the planet, with pets and so forth. Having a sense of meaning and purpose in life. We know scientifically that is absolutely fundamental to well-being. Being out there, moving our body, having some sort of learning and interest, and then having moments where we can just sit quietly in ways that work for us, whether that is, doing what we just did there, a little bit of mindfulness practice, or just sitting out on the deck with a cup of tea or a good book or whatever it is. So we have this wisdom and this understanding about well-being that is kind of wired into us. And really, it's not a question of what more can I do to support well-being when we're considering this. Often it's what do I need to free up? What time do I need to free up so I can make room for what's really important in my life and remember to do those things that really support my well-being. And that's a place where mindfulness is actually really effective. If we think of mindfulness in the broad sense of being that ability to give ourselves some space and some time to just stop, to pause, to maybe anchor our attention in the body with some mindful breathing and other types of practices, and just remember that innate wisdom and understanding around well-being so that we can make choices for ourselves about how we use our time. And this is actually one of the key messages in the Pause, Breathe, Smile program that we try and get across to kids, which is that when you practice mindfulness, you don't always need grown-ups to tell you how to behave, because you're learning for yourself what helps you and those around you to feel happy, and you can choose those behaviors. You can move in that direction. So yeah, we all have some inherent knowledge about this, but it's also really great to have a look at what the science says about well-being. So that, to give you a bit of an overview of where we'll go over the next little while, I'm going to start with the well-being piece, and then we'll do a little bit more of unpacking of mindfulness, and then we'll touch on pause, breathe, smile, and really in that give consideration as to how this may be beneficial for you in the work you do, and in your life as well. So one of the great new buzzwords that's out there in the well-being world is this notion of flourishing. And for those gardeners there in the room, this is not a word that's describing what's happening in your garden right now, though I hope it really is. Flourishing. This is actually a psychological term now, particularly in the field of positive psychology. A lot of thought is given to flourishing. And in fact, here in New Zealand, the Mental Health Foundation has a vision of a society where all people flourish. So they're really big on promoting this notion of flourishing. And we can think of this really simply. There's ways you can measure flourishing in people, and that's happening now and across populations. But to keep it real simple, I love this description, which is a state of well-being where we feel good and function well most of the time. And I really want to emphasize the most of the time part, because feeling good and functioning well all of the time is completely unrealistic. But feeling good and functioning well most of the time is far better than feeling crappy and barely functioning most of the time, which we could think of as the opposite of flourishing, which is described as languishing. And what I really like about this description of flourishing, the feel good and the function well factors, is if we take it a little bit further, it's highlighting really important dimensions of well-being. And the first one, feeling good, is really about our emotional well-being. And so what the science is showing us is that pretty much for every one kind of negative experience or interaction that we have in our lives, or unpleasant, I don't really like the whole positive, negative, use of those terms. But if we think of every kind of unpleasant interaction or experience or emotion that we're having, the science shows us that we need at least 3 of, the pleasant emotions and experiences and interactions to offset the harmful effect of that one unpleasant or that one negative. And this all comes down to the fact that we are hardwired to be on the lookout for anything that may cause harm to our well-being and to our very survival. It's called the negativity bias. I'm sure some of you have heard that term before, negativity bias. And basically it works like this. And I guess this is a question for you. Have you ever had a day where, maybe 9 or 10 good things happened in the day? Not like amazing. You didn't win lotto. That wasn't one of the things, but 9 or 10 like really quite pleasant interactions. It was generally a good day. Of course, there'd be a bunch of ordinary moments as there are every day. And then there was one negative interaction or experience that happened, like a grumpy email or a difficult conversation or whatever it is. So the question is, what is the thing that you're going to be probably most likely talking to your loved ones about when you get home that evening? Is it the 9 positive things, or is it that one negative thing that happened? For most humans on the planet, it's that one negative thing that happened, right? And so if you ever notice that in yourself and you've kind of beaten yourself up for reacting to something like that and ruminating over the one negative thing and missing all the other good things, you can relax, you can rest easy. Don't beat yourself up for it. About 7 billion or 8 billion other people on the planet have that same tendency. We're hardwired to be on the lookout for things that may be a threat to our very survival. And this made sense for our ancestors, right? If you went out to gather food or hunt food and you came face to face with a hungry lion, you want the fight-flight response to kick in. That's a good time to get stressed and get out of that dangerous situation. A few hours later, maybe your tummy's rumbling because of that pesky lion interrupting your expedition. Chances are you're going to remember every single detail of that route that brought you face to face with that hungry lion, because it may still be there and you don't want to be in that situation again. So that's why we're hardwired for it. Neuroscientists often say that negative experiences are like Velcro. They just tend to stick and our minds can stick on them for a long time, whereas positive and neutral experiences tend to be more like Teflon. They just kind of slide on out. But the good news is we can train our minds to really appreciate those positive and neutral experiences as well. And the more we do that, the more we become mindful of what's good in our lives, the more we practice gratitude and things like that, the better we get at doing that. And we can start to hit this place, this optimal place when it comes to emotional well-being that sits somewhere between 3 to 1 and 8 to 1. So at the upper end, for every one negative or unpleasant experience, there's 8 really good positive experiences that are offsetting the harmful power of the negativity bias. And that's a person in a really good state of emotional well-being. But why not 9 to 1 or 10 to 1 or 11 to 1? It's generally regarded that beyond that point of 8 to 1, you're probably not living in reality anymore. You're kind of walking around with rose-colored glasses on, sort of ignoring, life, things that need attending to that may be unpleasant. It's not about ignoring the unpleasant. It's just about having a good, healthy balance here. I'll come back around to that point a little bit more in a few moments. So emotional well-being, having a good balance of those things that you just reflected on before. Am I doing that enough? Am I doing the things that really nourish me and build me up, that will help offset the harmful effects of the negativity bias? It's really important for us to consider. And then the other aspect of emotional well-being that is really important, which mindfulness is actually really central to as well, is the ability to effectively regulate our emotions. So to notice how I'm feeling when I'm feeling it, to accept that it's okay to feel this way. Every emotion is valid. Every emotion has a reason for being. And it's not about ignoring the unpleasant stuff. If I'm angry, it's important that I accept that. I'm angry right now. It's okay to feel this way. It's not okay to act it out. It's not okay to go and hit someone. That's my response or my reaction to how I'm feeling. But the emotion itself is valid. So noticing it, accepting it, and then having strategies and skills and tools that we can draw upon to help manage our way out of our red zone, out of our fight flight response, back into our green zone where we feel balanced and calm and so on. Practices like mindful breathing and so on are really useful for that. So emotion regulation, really central there. And then functioning well. This other aspect to flourishing is what is really pointing to psychological well-being, is the integration of these attributes that you can see on screen in front of you. And often this really just gets summarized down to having a sense of meaning and purpose in our lives. And so another way of thinking of flourishing, feeling good and functioning well, is a healthy balance of pleasure and purpose. So we're doing things that bring pleasure, but we also have something that gets us out of bed in the mornings, that is meaningful to us in our lives. And one without the other, and we're in trouble. If well-being is all about pleasure seeking, then we just kind of end up like the rat in the wheel, chasing after the next emotional high and never really stopping to notice and be with what is currently present in our lives and appreciating that. We just get in this kind of habit of what's been dubbed if-then happiness, like if I get the new job, then I'll be happy. If I, buy the new shoes, then I'll get happy. Or if I renovate the house, then I'll get happy. If I get married, then I'll be happy. Maybe 5 years later, if I get divorced, then I'll be happy. And on and on and on it goes, just round and round and round and round. We're just training our minds to be going for the next thing and not stopping to appreciate what is actually here. So that's really important. But on the other hand, if it's all about meaning and purpose, and we don't stop to smell the flowers and take those moments to do the things that bring joy in our lives, then life can become a grind. It all becomes about the project, becomes about the job, it becomes about whatever it is that is previously given us purpose, but is now at risk of burning us out completely, and we lose all sense of meaning and purpose. And that's a risky place to be, because we know that's kind of a dropping off point into depression, where pleasure and purpose are not in healthy balance with each other. So it's another question, or another point of consideration here, is what are you doing in your life how's the balance for you between pleasure and purpose? Something to take away and just consider. Okay, so just these stats are a little bit old. I haven't updated them since these are pre-COVID, but they're still, and they paint a picture that was really quite unfavorable pre-COVID. But this is what we're facing as a species on this planet. Depression is the leading cause of disability worldwide, and is a contributor to the overall global burden of disease. And the WHO, they always predicted that we'd get there at 2020, and we got there 5 years sooner with that, which is not a race we want to be winning, of course, but this is a reality. And what this really highlights, these types of statistics, is that life is vulnerable. And this is a key point to understanding well-being as well, because it's not just all about the good stuff, feeling good, functioning well most of the time. Well, yeah, that's a great goal to aim for. But life is vulnerable, and that is okay. In fact, life is vulnerable by its very nature of being made up of relationships at every level of being, inwardly and outwardly. When we turn up for our lives, which is a really useful way of thinking of mindfulness, actually, is the act of turning up for my life and then attending to what I find here in this space of awareness here and now. When we fully turn up for our lives, we see that life is relationships at every level of being, across space and through time. And relationships by their very nature are dynamic. They're always shifting, they're always changing. And so that puts them in a state of inherent vulnerability, which means that my life is inherently vulnerable. It's not like I have my life and I have some vulnerabilities. The whole thing's vulnerable by its shifting, changing nature. And we have to honor that. We have to turn up for that and learn how to work with that. When things aren't going so well, vulnerability starts to manifest as psychological distress and suffering. When things are going really well, we could think of vulnerability as manifesting in the form of creativity and curiosity and a kind of, a really healthy sort of mind state that is picking up on new information and working with it in ways that are really creative and generative, I suppose you could say. Again, slightly older slide. This is before Brené Brown became really famous and had a Netflix series and all of that, which I'm yet to watch. But if you've never heard of her or if you've never seen this TED Talk, this is where it all started for Brené Brown. And it's a wonderful TED Talk, The Power of Vulnerability, really worth a little bit of time going and listening to that or reviewing that if it's been a while. So coming to mindfulness, we know from the science, and I'll show you some of this research soon, that it's very good for both helping us to move towards flourishing and in that direction of flourishing. It's really great for minimizing psychological distress. The strongest evidence for the benefits of mindfulness in society is reducing symptoms of depression and preventing relapse into depression, and for reducing symptoms of stress and anxiety. So those are the exact kind of things that we're struggling with as humanity, those forms of psychological distress. So mindfulness is definitely something that we need in the toolbox to really help manage that. When we deliver this in schools through the Pause, Breathe, Smile program, we have a really simple description, which is this on screen in front of you now. Mindfulness means noticing what is happening now with kindness and curiosity. And there's nothing in that description that says you need to learn to sit like a pretzel. Nothing about that in there. It's just about how am I actually turning up for my life? Am I present for what's going on? And what's the quality of my presence in that moment? These are the two key drivers or questions around this notion of mindfulness. So it's more about the way of being, my quality of being, and less about techniques and practices, although they can help as a type of mental fitness. So if we take that and we unpack that a little bit more, and we consider mindfulness as a life skill, which is what we do through Pause, Breathe, Smile. That first part, noticing what is happening now is really the first component of mindfulness. It's about intentional focus on immediate experience. Now, there's a lot we could say about this, and we don't have time today. But the intent side is that I'm making a decision. I'm purposefully making a choice to be putting down distraction, for instance, and reorienting my attention back to this moment here and now. And we've got this really great, reliable anchor to always return to, which is the body and the breathing. And through that, the science shows us that the nervous system starts to self-regulate and we can experience, qualities that are really useful. I noticed that a hand is raised. I just, if it's okay with you, I'd like to leave questions till the end of this. Is that a fair thing to say? And then we can address that then. So, and feel free also to place them in the chat. But definitely afterwards we can have some questions around this. So intentional focus on immediate experience. Now, the All Blacks, they used to have a team mantra. I don't know if they still do, but a few years ago, they used to say that you are where your feet are. And that's a great way of describing this first aspect of mindfulness practice. You are where your feet are. And I know Richie McCaw, for instance, had one of his core techniques was grounding himself in the sensations of his feet. Whenever he noticed a red mist kind of descending on the field, he would tune into his feet to help anchor him. And Karen Reid would look at the furthest point in the stadium as a way of just coming back to a place of focus and getting on with the game and not letting other distractions get in the way. So that's a great description. We are where our feet are. And then the second one here is that that point about it's not just the act of turning up for my life, it's about how I'm turning up. So it's about fostering the best qualities of the human heart. So intentional focus on immediate experience with curiosity, openness, acceptance, and love. So it's sort of head, heart, hands, very, very standard education statement, head, heart, hands, and feet all working together and in alignment on the task. We unpack that a little bit further. The first component is really about attention regulation. So number one, knowing where our attention is, which is easier said than done. I mean, some of you may have already phased out a little bit while I've been speaking and then suddenly realized, well, I missed all of that part there. What was he saying? Or we read a book and we get to the end of the page and go, oh, I need to reread it. It's actually a resource that seems to be diminishing with the rise of social media, unfortunately, but we can train our minds to replenish it. So knowing where our attention is, knowing where it needs to be, what's the task at hand, and then actually having the skills to redirect our attention back to where it needs to be. And that's a trainable skill. And that's where mindfulness practice really comes into play. And so how many of you, and I can only see a few of you on screen, but that'll give me a little bit of a sample, would say that the act of paying attention, how important is that to the process of education, would you say? Do you think it's important? Yeah, totally important, eh? I mean, if you can't stay on task and be with what we're exploring and we're learning, then we're not going to retain that knowledge. We're not going to transfer that knowledge to new situations. So it's really important. So, we might ask kids in classrooms to pay attention, but do we ever teach them how? This is really the key point when we're thinking about mindfulness in schools. It's really important to know how to pay attention. I could go on about this for ages, but I'll move on. All right, so regulating attention with kindness and curiosity. So that second component of mindfulness, we're just bringing that in, the ability to be with the experience with a greater degree of openness to it and acceptance of it, which doesn't mean that we don't change. It doesn't mean we become a doormat and just go, oh, that's my lot in life. It's the way it is. I can't change it. I just have to accept it for what it is. If we're in a harmful situation, and we just throw our hands up like that, that's kind of denying. That's denial. That's not acceptance. We have to actually be able to go, the situation needs changing. And the first step to doing that is accepting that something's happening here that's not right. Or in that example I gave before, actually noticing I'm feeling angry rather than getting into an internal tussle and fighting with myself about being angry. It's about, I'm angry. It's okay to feel this way. And then what do I do? What's my response to that? That's the next step. All right, so we did a little bit of practice before. Maybe I'll save this till the end a little bit. We'll do a little bit again at the end. Straight back, soft belly, and if we've got time, and then we'll go around and we'll come back to this part here. The other thing I just want to, no, I'm not up to that slide yet. Here's some research around mindfulness, particularly with children and young people. This actually applies to adults. Most of the research is with adult populations, but there's a growing amount that happening in schools with children and young people. As I mentioned earlier, reductions in depression, anxiety, and stress. That's sort of the big three, because that's the main things that have been studied. Improvements to mental health and well-being, boosting mood, and so on. A meta-analysis of mindfulness in schools initiatives happened a few years back, and the researchers there summarised that overall, when we bring it into schools, mindfulness seems to boost cognitive performance and builds resilience.
I haven't even done them. I'm still doing the loop.
A little bit about Pause, Breathe, Smile and what we do in schools. And you can see here, our mission really is for kind, connected, resilient, and flourishing tamariki. That's exactly what we've been measuring as well as we've been going through this. The program itself is composed of 8 lessons. And we actually have more follow-on activities for schools now, and we're developing more all the time. But the core of it are these 8 lessons, and you can see those 2 lines, sort of vertical lines going up in the middle there. That is really useful, I think, for understanding this program in kind of 3 interconnected phases. So in the first phase, it's all about fostering what's called interoceptive awareness, which means really being in tune with what's happening in the body, having the ability to return our attention to the body, allowing the nervous system to self-regulate, all of that good stuff, and helping our children and young people to develop a really healthy relationship with their body. And we know from research that high interoceptive awareness, when people are really in tune with what's happening in their bodies, is correlated with high states of well-being. Low interoceptive awareness is correlated with a range of mental health disorders, particularly body dysmorphic disorders such as eating disorders, for instance. So we really want and need ourselves and our kids to foster and develop that healthy relationship of honoring and noticing the life of the body. So, and in that too, in those first 3 lessons, we're really laying down basic mindfulness skills with the intention of applying those skills to areas that are really important for overall well-being. And so in lesson 4, all things rising and falling, that is really about emotion regulation, which I've already spoken to quite a bit. Emotions essentially are physical sensations happening in the body. Yes, there's mental narratives that accompany them, and those mental narratives themselves can trigger, as we know, an emotional response in the body. But we know, when you get anxious, it's you feel it in your body. We get hit up by anger. There's a physical change that happens in the body. If we're in tune with our bodies, and our kids are already developing those skills to be in tune with their bodies, we can see those changes happening, and we can draw on skills that we've been learning, such as dropping anchor with mindful breathing, to help respond to that emotional tension in a healthy, positive way, and to diffuse it in a positive way. And this is, anecdotally speaking, this is the number 1 way that we see kids using mindfulness when they've been learning Pause, Breathe, Smile, is to regulate and manage their own emotions. I heard a great story the other day, actually, about a school who had, they've been doing Pause, Breathe, Smile in their school for quite a few years now. And one of the kids from that school, he's moved on, he's no longer at the school. But I heard through a mutual contact who's the auntie of this child, said that she asked him, are you still, do you remember doing this program, Pause, Breathe, Smile? And he said, yeah, I did. She said, do you use any of those skills? And he'd been having some health issues, and he relayed a story of how he had to have an MRI recently. And that was a scary experience for him, going into the MRI machine. And he automatically just turned to his breathing and his mindful breathing to help him settle and to calm and to move through that experience. And that's exactly what this is all about, mindfulness as a life skill, and kids being able to draw on these techniques at times that are really meaningful and useful for them. Applying these basic mindfulness skills to the cognitive realm, lesson 5 there, understanding neuroplasticity and how the brain works a little bit. And really the kind of key mindfulness skill we're looking to develop there is the ability to discern the difference between helpful and unhelpful thinking, to really have the skills to let go of the unhelpful stuff and move with the helpful stuff. So sort of the same principle as for the previous lesson. And then the third phase of the program is sort of moving more into the interpersonal and the interconnected domains of our experience. So it's not just a healthy relationship with my own thoughts, feelings, and my body. It's about positivity and kindness and so on in my relationships with others, and then seeing my interconnectedness with the natural world as well. So that's a kind of a snapshot of the program. The core practices we focus on and continue with throughout the whole program: mindful breathing, mindful movements, mindful eating. All of these things have got a really strong focus on building emotional literacy. As some neuroscientists would say, if you can name it, you can tame it. So it's important our kids know how to name their emotions so that they can then do that work of managing them. And yeah, just a bunch of other things. We've got to focus on teacher well-being around, a course specifically for teachers to understand mindfulness and support their well-being. We've got a whole lot of digital resources in terms of guided practices and tutorial videos and so on to support the delivery of this in the classroom. We train teachers to deliver it to their kids. And ongoing engagement sessions, online webinars and get-togethers and so on that we do. And the whole program is contextualized by Te Whare Tapawhā, this beautiful and eloquent model of hauora from a Māori perspective. Paul's Breed Smile itself has been around for 10 years now. So I worked for the Mental Health Foundation for a long time, and that's where we developed it. And researched it alongside researchers from Auckland University and University, AUT University. And so we worked closely over time and continue to with the Māori development team there, which I'll come to a bit later about what we're doing in Kura Māori settings. But anyway, so the program's contextualized by the whare. And I think when we're thinking about well-being, obviously this is super important. And one thing we emphasize to teachers is that essentially what we're becoming mindful of are these different domains of hauora and how these practices we're learning can support health and well-being in these 4 domains and help us to understand the interconnectedness of these 4 domains too. And one of the things we actually get classrooms to do before they start with Pause, Breathe, Smile is create a model of a whare, and then we use it as a tool for review as we go through. So kids are always reflecting on how are these practices supporting and growing health and well-being in these different domains. Everything's linked to the New Zealand curriculum, and we've had a strong focus on research all the way through. So these are the results of 3 peer-reviewed published studies that were done during the pilot phase. And basically, we were really happy to see these outcomes, including statistically significant increases in childhood well-being, those dimensions of emotional well-being and psychological well-being we looked at before. That was sustained after 3 months. And a lot of independent evaluations have happened since that time of those first few studies. Ihi Research, which is a Canterbury-based research company, found these findings. I can maybe share these slides with you so that you can see this afterwards. And we had a master's student also who who wrote her thesis interviewing kids about this program. And these are quotes straight from that thesis, which are really lovely. Before I had a notice that she was feeling sad, but after I did mindfulness, I wanted to help her. We can see both empathy and compassion kind of manifesting in that simple statement. Emotion regulation in that statement down there in the corner. Lots of really great findings. And then since 2020, we've had the funding support of Southern Cross, which has made this program free for all primary and intermediate schools throughout New Zealand. up to 100,000 kids now, a little bit more than what's listed there. And we've just had our first 1 year report. So, it's actually 18 months. We get all schools now to fill in a survey before they start before they start training, 4 months later, to give them a window to get going with those 8 lessons, and then 1 year later. And we've found that across all of the schools that contributed to that well-being, and this is during pandemic times too, but well-being has been tracking upwards. In the brackets there, that's a 3-month score, and then the bold numbers are the 1 year later score. And the researcher points out that these results are significant, statistically significant. An increase in all of these great kind of qualities we'd like to see growing, and qualities that maybe we'd like to see a little less of, diminishing at the same time. And then flourishing, increasing, and languishing, decreasing. So it's been great to get this temperature check on every school that's running the program throughout New Zealand. And then we've been supporting, we've got a really great kaiako who has been in Kuta Kaupapa Māori education for a long time. And he's been leading the piloting of Pawsbury Smile and Te Reo Māori at a Kuta Māori, and we're just looking based on that to train in Kuta Māori and Kuta Kaupapa Māori and other full immersion settings. And really, I think I want to emphasize there that we're always about going, okay, take this, let it evolve and adapt in ways that it needs to. If it's not of use, discard it. That could be one way that it evolves, that it may be not of use. But let's make sure that that's got the engagement of the kaiako from the kuta that was piloting and putting into it from the tamariki themselves, and so on. And it's been, it's probably one of my favorite quotes there from the whole program, I think, over the years. So I guess my point here too is, if anyone's interested in training in Pawsbury Smile, we've got ways of training and resources both in English and Te Reo Māori, and training available in that too. Okay, so maybe I wanted to race through a little bit about that and get back to the mindfulness practice and a little bit of reflection around that now that we're gone through it. I looked at my clock before and went, oh, I'm taking a long time, but I've come near the end now. So got a little bit of space. We can get back to doing a little bit of straight back, soft belly practice. So I'll lead you through another short mindfulness practice, and then we can maybe just reflect on, do the round room reflection side of that, which we do in classrooms. So I just invite you once again to sit with your feet against the floor, or feeling your feet against the floor, sitting with a straight back, soft belly. And then just doing whatever is best in terms of your eyes that you feel is most supportive, probably closing them or keeping the gaze downcast. And I'll just riff off one of the core practices we do, the straight back, soft belly practice. So just taking a moment to notice each in-breath and each out-breath. If you like, you can place a hand on your belly, both hands on your belly. Maybe you can feel your belly filling like a balloon as you breathe in, and feeling it empty again as you breathe out. Breathing in, notice the belly rising. Breathing out, noticing it falling. We're just being aware of each in-breath and each out-breath. And now you may notice that every now and then you're thinking about other things and you've forgotten to notice your breathing. That's okay, that's what minds do. But just see if you can bring all of your noticing back to your breathing. Breathing in, feeling the belly fill like a balloon. Breathing out, feeling it emptying again. Just noticing each in-breath and each out-breath. Noticing when the mind has wandered away, and maybe you can just say silently the word wandering as a way of recognizing what the mind is up to, and just bringing all of your noticing back to the breathing. Maybe we can expand our awareness slightly for a few moments. So as you're breathing in and breathing out, also noticing the sensations of feet against the floor. Just moving your awareness up through your body, breathing with and noticing sensations in the lower legs and the knees. In your thighs and hamstrings. Noticing sit bones against chair. Breathing with and noticing sensations through the belly, the lower back, through the chest and upper back. Shoulders, arms, hands and fingers. Through the neck, head and face region. And seeing if you can just notice your whole body breathing. Just being aware of the life of this body, breathing in and breathing out. And then taking 3 more mindful breaths, breathing in, breathing out 1. Breathing in, breathing out 2. And then when you get to 3, you can just open your eyes and maybe have a little stretch, little wiggle of the fingers or whatever it is that you need to do. But before you just immediately turn around and talk to someone or anything like that, just notice the overall quality that's present for you right now through your body and your mind. And so maybe it helps to notice the quality of your seeing and your hearing and through your senses right now. And see if you can just come up with 1 word or 2 words that best describe how you're feeling in your body, in your mind, after doing that practice. And imagine that if you had maybe well, you can write it in the chat if you like, but think about those 4 domains of the whare, 4 domains of hauora. how has this short mindful breathing practice, what's the effect through the tinana, through the body? What's the mental emotional state like? What's the sense of connection? Has it nourished your wairoa, or what? How would you describe that? It may be one, it may be more than one, but just getting a sense of that. And if we were in the room all together, I would go around, we would share those 1 or 2 words. I can see the chat starting to fill up a little bit. So yeah, a lot of sleepy, that's often the way. And that, actually, maybe that's what your body needs. We live in a very overwhelming, full, pressured world, and it's only increasing in pace. So often when people get to this quiet practice, then, sleepy tends to be quite a natural response. And that's cool. That's fine.